Humility is often presented as making yourself small, but it doesn't have to be that way. Carefully cultivated humility can be a path to greater influence, learning, and power, especially when combined with curiosity and communication skills. Let me start off with what is humility? In the system of character traits and virtues, character strengths and virtues, worked out by top researchers in the field of positive psychology, like Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman, the character trait of humility and modesty falls under the virtue of temperance, along with forgiveness and mercy, prudence, and self-regulation. And in their book, Peterson and Seligman describe humility as a non-defensive willingness to see the self accurately, including both strengths and limitations. Humble individuals will not willfully distort information in order to defend, repair, or verify their own image. For humble people, there should be no press toward self-importance, and no burning need to see or present themselves as being better than they actually are. They should also not be particularly interested in dominating others in order to receive entitlements or to elevate their own status. On the other hand, humility should not lead people to take harsh or condemning approaches toward themselves, magnifying weaknesses, and severely punishing failures while overlooking strengths and successes. They also say that whether or not complete accuracy in your worldview is attained, the crucial point is that humble people welcome accurate information about themselves and thus should be teachable. And they say some scholars have argued that humility implies people's ability to transcend a focus on the self or to view themselves from a broader perspective. Humble people see themselves as one small piece of a very large universe. They're dependent on both chance and on other people for success, not just solely on their own efforts. So, moving on from definitions and basic descriptions, humility can be a tricky character trait to develop and apply wisely. It's easy to be overly prideful, to think too much of yourself and be blind to your faults, but it's also entirely possible to be too humble, to fail to act at all because you think what you can do isn't good enough, or to end up burnt out after years of working without public or even private acknowledgement. To apply humility correctly, we need to see it as appropriate and proportionate awareness of your limitations. Knowing your limits means being aware of what you can't do well and what you don't know. That doesn't mean abasing, insulting, or punishing yourself. It means realistically assessing your own abilities so you can apply them appropriately, delegate to others when that would be better, and work effectively on improving your skills. Saying, I suck, is not an effective or useful way to be humble. Saying, I am this good at this, I can improve here, maybe this person would be better for that job. Many religious concepts of humility and modesty have elements of self-abasement that are not useful to seeing yourself clearly or to taking effective action in the world. In effect, they take the idea of not glorifying and idealizing yourself so far that adherents can no longer acknowledge their own accomplishments or good character, which can actually be discouraging and tiring and reduce good behavior. So don't do that. Don't abase yourself and insult yourself. It is counterproductive. It is also, unfortunately, easy to get into the trappings of humility and miss the actual content. There's a Jewish joke that I think gets this across well. The chief rabbi of the synagogue is beating his breast and crying, tears running down his cheeks. I'm nothing, Lord, I'm nothing, I'm absolutely nothing. Next to him, the chief donor to the synagogue, a wealthy banker, kneels down and starts hitting himself on the chest and yelling, I'm nothing, God forgive me for thinking I'm something, I'm nothing. And Shlomo, the janitor, sees them doing this and is inspired. He gets down on his knees and yells, I'm nothing. The rabbi elbows the banker and goes, look who thinks he's nothing. You don't have to believe in God to see the point here. The rabbi and the banker in this story are performing humility as a way to place themselves above others, and they're completely failing to have actual humility about their own characters or their place in the world. Again, this is a tricky bit of character to pursue without getting tripped up in the accidentals instead of the essence. No one gets medals for humility, right? It's a trait that serves you in context, not all by itself as some kind of competition. You can't compete to be more humble. It's just not going to work. So why do we need humility? What does it do for us? Well, it is essential to learning. Learning anything depends on humility because you need to understand where your ability is now and acknowledge that you don't yet have the next chunk of knowledge or set of skills so that you can open your mind to it and assess your progress. Here's another story about humility. Nan-in, a Japanese master during the Meiji era, received a university professor who came to inquire about Zen. Nan-in served tea. He poured his visitor's cup full and then kept on pouring. The professor watched the overflow until he could no longer restrain himself. It's overfull. No more will go in. Like this cup, Nan-in said. You are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? If you want to learn, you have to get rid of the belief that you know everything already. You have to believe that there's something here for you to learn, that you can learn from this new teacher. Truly humble people can learn from anyone because they're aware that any person can show them something they haven't seen before. This next person you talk to may not have a degree or wealth or fame, but they may have read something you haven't or noticed something you haven't, and they certainly have had personal experiences you haven't had. In this way, the character trait of humility links to the character traits of open-mindedness and curiosity, which are part of the virtue of wisdom and knowledge. They're linked in some really important ways. Some people really enjoy being seen as the smartest person in the room. But if you're always the smartest person in the room, or critically, you always think you're the smartest person in the room, you're not learning anything. Get a better crowd or learn to learn from others, whether or not you think they're smart. Besides learning, we also need humility in order to negotiate with people and simply to get along with them. No one likes someone who's always bragging and never listens. Even if you do think you know better than those around you, maybe because you have a high level of expertise in the subject at hand. You'll do better in business and you'll do better in relationships if you leave some room for them to contribute to conversations, to argue for their choice, and even to be right sometimes. You're also much less likely to end up with egg on your face if you left open the possibility you might be wrong to begin with. If you're pushy and full of yourself, you end up looking like an ass on the occasions you turn out to be wrong. And not only that, people will gloat over your embarrassment because they don't like how pushy and arrogant you are. Save yourself that. Make yourself someone people will listen to by hedging your statements somewhat and being gracious to questioners. Don't assume you're always right because nobody is always right and you're just going to look dumb. Research shows that humility strengthens social bonds and that humble people are more likely to help others. I don't know which way the causality goes there, but you can try either direction, see whether it helps. Humility is also essential to leadership. Seems a little odd, but good leaders know their limits and they know how to delegate. Wise kings and presidents have cabinets full of advisors who are expert in the huge range of things the leader needs to understand. Nobody can know it all, but to make the wisest choices, you want to be consulting the people who know each area really well. Good leaders also share credit. A gracious and savvy boss will credit everyone who contributed to a project, not try to claim it all themselves. Sharing the credit is part of being humble, and it builds trust and cooperation. It helps everyone feel heard and appreciated, and that'll help with future projects. A boss who steals credit for someone else's work or their ideas will either lose those talented and dedicated employees, he'll go find someone who treats them better, or they will discourage those workers who will start just phoning it in, and you're not going to get that great work to claim anymore. If you manage a team, your job is not to look like the best member of the team, it's to help the team be the best it can be. Scientist Dr. Jiancheng Yang and colleagues further investigated why humility among leaders is important, and they found that leaders who express humility are likely to see improved growth, development, and performance among their team members. And they create work environments that are more psychologically safe. So people can relax and do their best work, and they're more likely to stick around. In addition to these benefits, humility is also good for your mental health. It supports your own resilience. Dr. Neil Krauss and his team found that humility can help buffer the impact of a stressful event, helping to protect your overall happiness and your life satisfaction, and protecting from depression and anxiety. Practicing humility can help to boost your own well-being. In short, humility, rather than being the opposite of greatness, turns out to be essential to true greatness, since it is essential to successful learning, communicating, leading, and resilience. If you already have a lot of confidence, consider how you can work to be more open to new ideas, correction, improvement, and assistance. And if you tend towards self-deprecation, consider that humility requires honest self-assessment, including recognizing your own good qualities and skills and putting them to best use. Humility allows us to better collaborate, learn, and get along. How can we learn humility? Some concrete steps we can take to practice humility are: listen more, speak less. Practice active listening, ask people questions, make sure you are working to understand what someone else is saying and acknowledge it. Support others without bragging. If someone is working on something, help them out. And celebrate others' successes. If someone else does something great, congratulate them, celebrate them. Don't try to make it about your own even better success. You'll get better social results, better leadership results, and better results for your own mental health and well-being if you can do these humble practices. Now, let's discuss with an awareness that none of us know it all and an openness to new perspectives.